Welcome to Off the Coast, where we examine the views from Vancouver Island with your host, Rosemary Barnes. New and exciting things, preserved and respected things, business, recreation, politics, travel, all from the point of view of the people living and working on the island. Rosemary is a professional speaker and certified speaking coach living in historic Ladysmith and loving every day of the island life. Here is your Vancouver Island host, Rosemary.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Off the Coast, Views from Vancouver Island. I'm your host, Rosemary Barnes, the maverick voice at Confident Stages. Today, I have a very special guest out of Victoria. His name is Dan Gunn, and what this man doesn't know about the technology industry that is booming in Victoria, no one knows. But just before I get that, I'm going to shamelessly and verbally plug an event that everyone who has to speak in public should know about. And here's the trick. At some time or other, everyone will have to speak in public. A fellow named Robert Moment once said that public speaking skills are an essential key to achieving career advancement and success. Way back a long time ago, Dale Carnegie said, "Great speakers are not born, they are trained." And Rosemary Barnes says, oh, that's me, all speaking in public is public speaking. If you say one word, if it's outside of your shower, you are giving a presentation, so it had better be good. Put these three quotes together, and the very clear message is that if you're in business, whether you're a natural-born showman or speaker or not, you can and must be trained to speak properly, eloquently, and with charisma, warmth, and power in order to make your presentations potent. On October 28th to 30th, Souk Harbour House, outside of the Greater Victoria area, the workshop will take place, and it is designed to help you create compelling content. It is designed to organize that content so that neither you nor your audience is likely to forget any of it. It is designed to give you the finesse and the grace and the charisma that you require to deliver and present that content. And finally, there'll be a session on how to transfer all that information that is used for live presentation into the world of media so that you can then use it for webinars, seminars, teleseminars, radio, television. October 28th to 30th, Souk Harbour House. The name of the workshop is Potent Presentation. Contact R. Barnes at confidentstages.com for the details. And now back to the show. Mr. Dan Gunn is a lifelong community builder, from starting companies to elected office, to CBC radio contributor, to his current role as CEO of Viatec, known as the Victoria Innovation, Advanced Technology and Entrepreneurship Council, and that's a mouthful. He has spent more than 20 years in hands-on roles building communities, economies, and art cars. Dan is proud to have dedicated 16 of those years serving entrepreneurs and innovators of Victoria, BC, that make up the members of a not-for-profit society that prides itself on making a difference and giving back. Viatec is often cited as a model example of how to build community and economy in tandem with a unique and decidedly idealistic approach. Dan now takes time to speak across the world and share the story of how Canada's smartest, most creative, fittest, most romantic and entrepreneurial city set out to evolve from a sleepy government town full of tourists into a tech hub with the best food, beer, music, and attitude you would want to live in. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I love this quote that you've given me. It's okay to be a bull if you know when you're in a china shop and you know when you're at the rodeo. I love that. Did you write that?
Yeah, I just came up with this idea of a China shop rodeo one day when I was talking with friends where in the morning we were delicately balancing some diplomatic issues, and at the end of the day we were trying to really transform the city by doing some bold things. And I realized that sometimes you're in the China shop and sometimes you're at the rodeo, and it's as long as the bull knows where they are, they won't wreck the place. They'll govern themselves accordingly.
You know, have you ever noticed that a great number of entrepreneurs have a hidden bull?
Oh, I think, yeah. If you, I think everybody has. Everybody has their own spirit animal, but I think that we all should have something that's confident and bold inside.
I would hope so, and that's what causes all the teenage angst, is that they don't know whether to let the bull out or train him to be docile.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So you are the tech master.
Huh?
In Victoria. You are well known, Mr. Gunn, as being the pusher, the mover, the shover, the doer for tech in Victoria. So tell me, we all know that tech is making its presence really known in the city, but how big is it really?
Sure. We constantly try and gather information and study that and do what they call economic impact assessments. And we're in the middle of a new one right now, so I don't have the latest numbers, but we did one a few years ago. I guess it's 3-4 years ago was our last one. And we found that the nearly 900 tech companies in Greater Victoria were doing about $3.15 billion in revenue and having an economic impact over $4 billion, employing about 15,000 people directly. And to put that in perspective, the tourism industry, this year is actually a very strong year for tourism in Victoria. I'm excited for that because it brings more people to our shores, which could become more employees or entrepreneurs in our tech sector. But they're typically running in the $1 billion or the low $1.2, $1.3 billion range. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a banner year. But to give you an idea, tech then is up to 3 times larger than our tourism industry, which is what most people know the city for, because many people, when they visited here, they were a tourist, and so they stuck to those parts of town, and they were marketed to it in that way. But also, credit to our local tourism authority, Tourism Victoria. They've really started to embrace the story of our innovation in the city and our tech entrepreneurship. And more the story they're telling around the world is about what a vibrant young city Victoria has become. And so we're really excited for that. But it's the largest private industry in Greater Victoria. It's one of the larger employers, but tourism definitely employs probably close to twice as many people as we do. And we're still a government city. About 6,000 people work for the provincial government here in Victoria, and so tech is employing almost 3 times as many people as our the seat of the public capital, which is exciting as well. So it's been growing steadily, and it's growing as fast as we can find the resources to keep it going.
I moved to Vancouver Island from Alberta 3 years ago. Victoria was known to us as the retirement city, the beautiful, incredibly beautiful, best weather in Canada, city of island time, if you will. Mm-hmm. But when I started to frequent Victoria more and more often as I became accustomed to being here, boy, Victoria certainly didn't strike me as fitting that description whatsoever. When I go into Victoria, I see a vibrant, alive, growing, excited place.
Yeah, I would agree entirely.
You go into downtown Victoria properly, and it is buzzing with activity. Mm-hmm. So thank you for changing and helping to change the way people see Victoria, and by extension, that whole area, the whole bottom third of the island, is very different than what it used to be seen as, and it's probably mostly your fault.
Well, thank you. We did set out quite a while ago now, almost more than 10 years ago. We set out to change what people thought of the city because we were hearing exactly what you said, that most people thought of it as a retirement community, a government town, old England and tea and flowers and things like that. Mm-hmm. And for us, that was a challenge because we were trying to attract more young talent to the city. And of course, they want to go to exciting places. But we recognize that, people don't travel to the same place frequently. And so changing the perception of a city can take as long as it takes to measure a climate. It takes like 30 years because they remember that time they visited their grandmother in the 90s when they were here, and they haven't been back since. And so they have this sort of they put us into this pigeonhole along the way. And so we kind of out of necessity at Viatec started calling the city Techtoria as a new moniker to drive attention to the number one industry and to attract more people. We needed to attract more investors and more employees and more entrepreneurs. And really the secret to that was to tell people the truth and to show them the young, vibrant components of the city that they otherwise hadn't seen. And a lot of people, especially if they haven't been here for 10 years, I think they'd be quite stunned when they came to Victoria. The city's gotten a lot younger. I think I've heard for the first time that people between they're 22 to 35, or maybe it's 18 to 35, now outnumber the people that are over 65. And believe me, in Canada, the over 65 demographic is large. And so that transition in the last little while has led to lots of world-class breweries and great restaurants and food and music festivals. A great deal of sort of modern urban culture takes hold here. And you get a lot of creative, innovative people who choose an island in the Pacific that happens to be in Canada as home. And when they do that, they come and they change the place to be something more reflective of them. And so I think it's quite exciting to see the transformation, and it's our honor to be one of the primary cheerleaders and people holding that up for everybody to see.
It is amazing to me. One of the things that I've done throughout my life is I've been a school teacher. And when it comes to the millennial generation and whatnot, and all that great hoo-ha that's going on about the generation, I come down on their side every time. Every time. The generation that has had to deal with this flood of information attacking them from every side was bound to have consequences. But oh my goodness, this generation is full of creativity and originality and ideas and energy and the wherewithal to get whatever they need to make things happen. And so I am just pleased as punch to know that because they naturally are attracted to tech, that Victoria is becoming home for this great group of people. And so that's an important thing to have done. Would you tell me, please? Okay, now we know Viatec is huge and that it's one of the main movers and shakers of the economy of Victoria now, and therefore of the island. But what is it?
Sure. So Viatec, a couple of things. The basics. We're a not-for-profit, member-driven society, and so tech companies in Victoria join Viatec because they want to network and collaborate, because they want access to education. They want to band together to support initiatives like the Techtoria initiative to attract more people, to do HR compensation studies and things like that. And so we have about 470 members. I think it's 476 members as of yesterday. That number continues to rise, and we're excited about that. And they all join for different reasons. And there, a lot of people when they hear technology, they think you mean internet, information technology, computer-related stuff. But it's much more diverse than that. It's aerospace. It's advanced manufacturing, ocean sciences, environmental sensors. So we have a very broad tech sector here in Victoria, which actually makes us much stronger because the shared disciplines can do a lot for each other by sharing what they're very good at and learning from others. So a gaming company might learn a great deal about quality control from an advanced manufacturer who might learn a great deal about perhaps inventory management from somebody in another area. And so that's the people we serve. Viatec was started over 25 years ago now. I think we're the oldest tech industry association in the province, and we're almost the largest. There is one in Vancouver that's got a few more members than us, but you never know what's going to happen by the end of this fiscal year. And we were started early on. We were much more closely related to the provincial government of the day, and we were kind of delivering programs that they wanted. But now we're a full-fledged industry organization where half of our budget is coming from memberships and sponsorships and ticketed events, and we have a job board that a lot of people like to use when they're looking for work. And the other half is coming from programs like our Accelerator program, which is dedicated to hiring executives and residents, which are people who have built and sold tech companies before. Then they get assigned to promising young tech companies in town, and their job is to coach them, advise them, and bring them along, hold them accountable, and help them make some difficult decisions. And just recently, a couple of years ago, we made a pretty exciting move, and we purchased our own building in downtown Victoria that we call Fort Techtoria. And it's a 16,000 square foot building that houses about 25 early stage tech companies now. And we have a cafe and an event space on the main floor. And we really wanted to have something in the downtown core at a retail level that could serve as the evidence of the growing tech sector. Because one of the funny things about tech in Victoria is most of the companies aren't here to be close to a customer. They're here because they went to university here, they worked at one of the federal research labs here, or they just decided they could be anywhere in the world, and Victoria is where they wanted to be. And so as a result, they don't put a lot of signage up. They don't do a lot of branding locally because they're selling their products all around the world, not here in Victoria. And so we call it a second floor industry, that you walk around town and you'll see lots of restaurants and coffee shops and retail in the downtown core. And what you don't see is the second and third floor above all of those places are tech companies that are quietly changing the world and bringing in a massive economic impact locally. And so because they were hidden, we wanted to buy a building and put a big giant neon sign on it that says Techtoria so that people could come and see that it was real and not just something that they read about. And since we opened that, several other similar facilities have opened in the vicinity directly around us, within a block all around us. And so we're starting to get lots of evidence for people to see that there's a thriving tech hub here. And that's really our job. Our job is to grow the tech sector in Greater Victoria. And the way we do that is we talk to the entrepreneurs that are leading the companies and find out what their opportunities and their challenges are. And then we try and help them to either leverage or mitigate, depending on the situation, and look for those great common denominators. We can't serve every company individually based on a very tight need. But if I find 10, 12, 100 members that all tell me this is a current challenge that they'd like to see addressed, then we start gathering the resources required to try and take a swing at that. And they really benefit because there's sometimes as a company, you can't change the perception of a city by yourself. You can't create the branding materials to tell the story of an entire region on your own. And so banding together with your fellow members and us allows you to move the needle on those really important things that otherwise wouldn't get done. And so that's the reason why we exist and we get up every day, and it sure is a fun, great thing to get to do.
You are, in essence, a mentoring company. Because not only do you create and distribute and share and push boundaries, but you also provide much needed mentoring assistance to fledgling companies. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's one of our programs is definitely focused on that. The other thing is we're more like the facilitator of mentoring. So we do have people that we hire and we bring on board. But the nice thing about Victoria is most people chose Victoria. They could have been in many places, and they chose to come here for a number of reasons, and it's usually lifestyle driven. And that makes them unusual compared to, I come from a place like Toronto where most people, if they moved there for an opportunity. And so they're being a little bit more nomadic, right? They're thinking about, well, I'll go make the big money in Toronto, and based on that money, I'll buy a cottage in Muskoka and I'll go to it twice a year and that'll be fulfilling. Whereas the people who come to Victoria have said, what's most important to me is that I look at the ocean every day and that I have hundreds of kilometers of bike trails and hectares of parkland and very clean air. And so they have an esprit de corps among them that they all kind of value the same things. And they don't want to leave. And so social capital is very valuable here. I've often joked that there's no bridge to Vancouver Island, so you can't afford to burn one. And And so because of that, people they manage their reputation very carefully. And that means that they're willing to help and get involved and give back. And so what we do more than offer the mentoring, which we definitely do, is we create the opportunities for the networking and the mentoring and the collaboration to happen. And we do our best to, introduce like-minded people to each other so that they can hit it off. And then we call on them, the ones that, we've helped in the past that have benefited. We call on them to help somebody else who's coming up along the way. And the nice thing is we don't have to work very hard to persuade people here. I think Victoria might be the easiest place in the world to get your first coffee meeting with somebody. Now, whether or not you get a third coffee meeting tells you whether or not you've struck a chord, but it's very open to that. And so I think it takes time. I think anybody who's listening that's not from Victoria and is thinking about coming here, you do need to build yourself some time to work your way into the network. Some people call it cliquey, and I don't think that's fair. I think what it is we often get people from other parts of the world that come here, and they kind of come with the same attitude that they had wherever they came from. And they're like, I'm going to do this. I was a big deal there, and I expect that I'm just going to call everybody and they're going to want to treat me like I'm a big deal. The thing is a lot of people around Victoria are very humble and understated, but they actually are a big deal too. And what they're trying to see is, are you really in this for the long haul? Are you somebody who's come here from Calgary for 6 months and you think you're just going to, introduce yourself and all the doors are going to open and you can do whatever you want? Or are you actually invested in the long term in our community for the next 30 years like I am? And so that takes a little bit of time for them to assess and evaluate that. And so it's the ones that give themselves a patient runway and deliver the evidence that they're in it for the long haul and for the greater good that get the most traction. And I think that sometimes I'm frustrated by how long it can take to get somebody who's got a great skill set plugged into the level that I think they deserve. But on the other side, I really do respect how careful they are with their social capital here, because it means you get the highest quality people making it through to the other side.
The community on Vancouver Island is huge. We are an island after all. Mm-hmm. But people are very, very proud to live here. And as you say, they have chosen to live here, and they choose to keep it to the standard that we find acceptable. And I don't think that's cliquey. I think that's, and it's not protective either. It's simply, can you keep up to our standard? And I think that's a valuable thing, to make sure that the quality of service that everyone provides is top notch. And I like that. Now, technology is changing faster than some people don't like change. They find it very difficult to handle change, and that means most of the people have difficulty with change. Now, in the technology industry, whether you're talking about marine applications or forces applications or flying to the moon applications, right down to your humble desktop, things are changing faster than you can blink. So my question is, being as the majority of people have severe difficulty handling change, does this make tech people weird and wonderful?
I guess it's a little bit of a differentiator. I don't know that people are as scared of change as they once were. I don't know. We're still waiting to see what the next generations are going to be like. We're starting now to get adults that were born with the internet, and that hadn't happened before. But I think one thing I do like, one thing I think that bands them together in a tribe, the tech people that I'm one of, is they really do relish change and innovation and improvement. And so when a new idea comes along, their reaction is never to be concerned or scared. It's to evaluate, the validity of the statement or the opportunity, and then to enable it to be successful. And so I think, probably if there was an us and a them, which I don't like to think of it that way, but the us would be, change is opportunity and it's not fear. And for some, it can be too much to handle. And, I think all of us have a varying level of, a varying threshold for our ability to adopt and adapt to change. But tech people spend most of their time, when they hear a new idea, smiling and being excited about it, as opposed to being judgmental or protective.
Which is so exciting, as this world is changing faster than ever before. And if we don't change with it, well, we'll just have to sit on the sidelines and watch then. So I think it's marvelous. And which is why I come down so firmly on the side of Generation Y, and even more so, as you say, Generation Z, the ones who were born into this rapidly changing world and who take it as completely normal that things change at the drop of a hat. So I'm very excited to see what our young people have to bring to all of this. But specifically, 16 years ago, you started with Viatec. Mm-hmm. In 16 years, I bet it has changed in an enormous way.
Yeah, I think, well, tech has changed, and the city has changed, and our industry has changed, right? So it has been, I didn't intend, when I came to Victoria to go to Royal Roads, my intention wasn't to end up working at a not-for-profit and staying in Victoria, but I fell in love with the city, and I got a 7-month contract with Viatec when I graduated. My professor at Royal Roads at the time was the CEO of Viatec, and he offered me a short-term position, which I just kept showing up, and they kept paying me and giving me more stuff to do. So I never left, and then I ended up moving into the CEO role in 2005. So about 4.5 years after I started with Viatec, and so I've seen a lot with the industry here. I think the biggest difference is. And, I think this is like the first time I've kind of felt like I was the silverback in the corner watching the up-and-comers, that a lot of them, they started their company 5-10 years ago when tech was starting to become or was widely accepted as the number one industry. And they don't remember 16 years ago when I remember talking to news editors, and this is a quote, I won't say who, but it was a local news editor that said, "Tech isn't a story in Victoria. Nobody cares, and they never will."
Oops!
that was 16 years ago, and so I think there's a lot who are like, kind of, tech is cool now, and they're a part of that, but they don't know actually about the heavy lifting that it took to start changing the perception of the place. Also, even the ones that were running the companies then, I remember when I did the first economic impact study, and we found that we were about $1 billion industry. And I went around talking to tech CEOs, and they just didn't believe it. They were like, "There's no way we're $1 billion industry." And I had to start showing them all the numbers for them to come around. And so that's where we started. It was like, not only did the world think Victoria was a sleepy place, and not only did the people who lived here think that we didn't have a tech industry and nobody was going to care, but even the tech CEOs themselves were of the mind that it's just not possible that we could be that big. And so that was where we started, and then we've been building ever since. And so seeing them grow in their confidence and their recognition of their impact, and then adapting or realizing the responsibility. If you're the number one industry, you have a role to play in the overall shape of your community. And so I urge them to be what I call patrons of imagination, which involves the arts, and it involves entrepreneurship and innovation. And I think that's the role that we can play. And now they're funding with the money they've made in tech. They're investing in breweries and restaurants for the city. They're investing in arts and festivals and creating those, and sponsorships and that type of thing. And so it's really neat to see them go from not thinking they had any role to play and just being quietly working away on their world-changing product to understanding where they stand. And at the same time, it's in particular the last 10 years in Victoria, it's like a switch went off. And I think that when I got here in '99, there was a group, I call them the patriarchs, and I mean that in both the positive and negative way that the word can be taken, that were the patriarchs of our economy, and they were the well-connected ones, and the charities and the events that they chose to support were the ones that were considered the most important and got the most coverage. And for whatever reason, I think they were reluctant to pass the baton. And so as they went from their 40s to their 50s to their 70s, they continued to insert themselves overall in the direction of the community. And I think for that, there was sort of a lost generation that was 20 years behind them that didn't really get the opportunity to take the city in the direction they wanted to go. And in my estimation, what happened almost exactly 10 years ago, at least between 8 to 10 years ago, was another generation of, at the time, 30 to 40-year-olds didn't recognize or understand the people who had been running the economy before that, or running the community, or the community leaders. So they didn't know who to ask permission. and they just started creating their own things, whether or not that was a brewery or a great music festival or an art show or what have you. They just started doing things differently and opening their own restaurants and bringing back things they'd seen elsewhere in the world. And just quietly, they took the baton. They just didn't know that there was a baton that they were supposed to ask for along the way. And so I think that's the most exciting thing about what's happened here in our community, is that Victoria is a world-class city no matter how you look at it. If you look at it from the arts, if you look at it from lifestyle, if you look at it from innovation, education, whatever it is, and people in Victoria actually are recognizing that now. And I wouldn't say they're conceited or bragging too much about it, but they're confident in it. And when we know that only 1% of the population of Canada is going to live in Victoria, right now we're about 340,000, which is 1% of the population in Canada, they're quite happy to be what they want the city to be and to insist that anybody else who wants to be a part of it live up to that standard, which is something we talked about before. And so seeing it go from that sort of understated, ugly duckling into, a proud, confident swan has been pretty cool.
You really do sound like a proud daddy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think a lot of it too, was the timing. I mean, obviously the tech sector had a role to play, and Viatec had a role to play in helping the tech sector come along, but a lot of things aligned just right for Victoria and now the trick is, how do we maintain the momentum and how do we preserve the quality going forward and not make the mistakes of a place like Austin, right? Where I think Austin is still a great city, but Austin used to be the best city. And it's a state capital and it's a university town and it's built on weird entrepreneurs and innovation. And it grew so fast, from 500,000 to over 1 million people, and they just didn't plan it out very well. And so now there's lots of infrastructure components that are a struggle there. Trying to get around Austin is much tougher than it should be. And so I think we need to look at those types of lessons along the way and make sure that we don't make the same mistakes, and we plan out for our future and we maintain what we love about the city.
Well, just for example, just try and get out of Victoria at 3:00 in the afternoon, any afternoon.
Yeah.
The traffic is horrendous. But something, you have mentioned the arts a couple of times, and inquiring minds need to know, what are art cars?
Oh, sure. Well, an art car, I'm building, Jesus, how do I put that into words? It's a concept vehicle, so it's mobile, and it's more about the aesthetic than it is about the ride or the comfort. And the idea is to really open people's minds and make them think differently, and to build something beautiful. And so the first time I saw real art cars was at an event called Burning Man that's in the desert in Nevada, and it's an arts festival with about 65,000 people. And there's 750 or more art cars, and some of them are huge, like huge multi-bus art cars, and some of them are very small, like built on a wheelchair motor. And so I saw those, and we were doing a project here in Victoria where a really good supporter of the tech sector named Owen Matthews had found a double-decker bus, a 1968 double-decker bus. And he called and said, "What would you do with this?" And so we made it look like a cross between a 1950s Chevy Bel Air and a rocket ship. And we take that to music festivals, and it's a great venue for watching events, and it looks great on at any festival. It's one of those things that, art is just one of those things that makes you just feel a little bit better and think a little different. And so an art car is a mobile version of that. And so right now I'm just finishing. As soon as I finish with you today, I'm actually going back to the shop at the Makerspace here in Victoria to put a few last pieces of interior on. And we've made, the best description we've come up with is a Viking ship rocket train. I've lost track of how many thousands of.
Give me a second to imagine this. No, just a minute. A Viking ship rocket train. Is that what you said?
It is what I said. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
now I'm picturing this. And I'm afraid you're just going to have to give me a detail or two more about that.
Well, we started out with, I really wanted to build something that was rocket-oriented. There's a lot of stuff that we do here at Viatec that has rockets built into it, and I just love that retro-futurism look and feel. And so we started out building that, and then over time, we just kept finding other elements. And so I've built kayaks out of mahogany before, and that became a big part of this build. We're using the same wood skills. And so that gives it kind of the ship feel on the side, but then it has big thrusters like a space shuttle on the back and on the sides to give it that speed look. And then I like to go to swap meets around the island, and I found headlights from a 1934 Model A Ford. So those are on the front, and we fashioned a grille that kind of looks like an old car, but also looks like the front of a train. And then we added a couple thousand lights and a big stereo and what's called a flame poofer. It shoots out the top, so it's safe, but above the crowd, it shoots 10-foot flames up in the air whenever we push the button. And it's just a thing to make people say, wow. And so when we're at parades and festivals, we capture the imagination of some kids out there, and they decide that maybe they should learn more about math and science so that they can build something like that themselves.
Technology speaking wise, are you still using an internal combustion motor in those?
Well, it depends on your environment. And so that's a really good question. Originally, we had a chassis that was going to be electric. But one of the main places that we plan to use this, charging is a challenge because it's isolated and it's completely off the grid. And so, and it's also a very harsh environment. And so experienced art car builders around the world told me, do not try and make this car electric. And so we have a small 15 horsepower Kawasaki powertrain that we've built in underneath, and then everything else is electric.
Oh, all right. So you've managed the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hybrid, but it's not the type of thing you would see come out of a Toyota plant.
Okay, so now you have to put the word hybrid in front of Viking.
I think hybrid's implied when you say Viking ship rocket train. There must be some hybriding going on there.
Yes, somebody knew somebody, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me that technology covers everything these days. It really does. Technology touches our lives in everything we do. So we've talked about how Viatec has grown and is changing the face of British Columbia's capital city. We've talked about what Viatec is, what its mandates are, and how you go about facilitating mentorship for growing companies. We've talked about how Viatec itself has changed in 16 years. What do you think is going to happen in the next 16 years? Put on your forecasting gloves now.
Yeah, people love to ask that question. And it's a very difficult one to answer. I think that if you asked me 16 years ago, I wouldn't have predicted correctly where we are right now. As an example, when we decided to do the Tectoria branding exercise to change the perception of the city, I told my board, this is a 30-year job, and I after 10 years, I feel like we're far ahead of that schedule, so that's great. I didn't think that the tech industry would grow 300%. It pretty much has been adding $1 billion every 5 years in revenues, and so if we look at that, then $6 to $8 billion in revenues is probable. By the time we get to 2032 or 2035, which is exciting. Also, I think we'll have more tech employees. But the definition, tech, you talked about tech being everywhere. When Viatec started, our name was the Advanced Technology Center, and then we changed it to the Innovation and Advanced Technology Council, and now we're the Innovation, Advanced Technology, and Entrepreneurship Council. And those adding the words innovation and entrepreneurship are really key in that I've seen people do remarkably innovative and entrepreneurial things in more traditional businesses, but they're still the type of people that we want to have around our members. They're the type of people we can help, and they're the kind of people who are changing the world. And so I think one of the big things is the term technology has really lost all meaning, and I'm sure we'll come up with other words to use it, and then we'll overuse them until they're ruined too. But that's so I think that the definition of where does technology start and stop is getting harder and harder to figure. And so that's why we wanted to add things about innovation and entrepreneurship, and that if somebody is using creative thinking, especially if they're doing research, I mean, that's a no-brainer, but if they're using creative thinking to solve a problem, and then they're willing to take the risks that it takes to create a company, employ people, create a product, and find a market, then those are our people. And whatever name they want to give that, those are the people we're going to keep serving. And I think, for Victoria, like we've talked about, there's a crossroads. There are intentions for, when you're talking about getting out of Victoria, you were talking specifically about driving out one of the main throughways to get in and out of the city, and it is a bottleneck. And so there are plans underway to improve some of that traffic, but I think that's a little bit of a canary in the coal mine for us. That look what happens when we don't plan as a region. We are challenged, and maybe we're gifted, but I don't see it fully, that by 13 different municipalities for 340,000 people. And so that's a lot of decision-making bodies that are going to make narrower decisions based on what impacts a smaller region. And as a result, you can get decisions made that benefit something at the end of the line or somewhere in the middle. But if the other parts are hindered or damaged by it, that's an issue. And so I think the real key is, perhaps we could have a $20 billion industry in the next 15 years. But to do that, we need to maintain affordability, which is an issue because of the upward pressure created by the Lower Mainland market in Vancouver. We need to maintain the lifestyle that we all love, because that's the one thing that we can use to really attract and keep the talent that we need to grow the sector. And we need to be forward looking beyond tomorrow on what that's going to require, what infrastructure is going to be needed in place. But we need to be protective, and we need to be deliberate about those things, or we're going to lose momentum, and we're going to lose advantage, and that could set us back. And so what's going to happen in the next 16 years is as much dependent on the innovators in Victoria as it is on the leadership of Victoria.
And as you say, with 13 different municipalities all making up the Greater Victoria area, that means that every decision is made by committee.
Yeah, or it's made independently, without consultation or consideration. Yeah,
and that simply is doomed. So while the whole island treasures the spirit of community, we have little communities too, all struggling to maintain what they deem to be the perfect situation. But yes, we need people who are looking at the whole thing and having to make probably some difficult decisions to benefit the whole. And boy, people are not going to be liking that sort of thing. But as you say, if we don't have forward-looking people with a view toward what happens in 16 years' time, in 20 years' time, we could end up exactly like that lovely city in Texas.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a risk. I think there's indications, though, and I think they're being picked up on that that the old way isn't going to have the same level of support it's had in the past. And so when you look at the last election that we had municipally, we had a new mayor elected in downtown Victoria and a new mayor elected in Saanich, and that's the two biggest municipalities in the region, and they were unseating largely popular mayors, and so that was an indication people were looking for change. At the same time, there was a referendum in most municipalities, I think maybe it was all of them but one, asking, do you want to see amalgamation further studied? And every region, I think even Oak Bay, maybe Oak Bay quietly defeated it by like a few percent, but every region, the voters indicated that they wanted to see that studied and looked into more. And that, I think is an important signal to anybody who wants to be a community leader, that, pretending like it was that way 25 years ago and that's the way it should be forever is probably not going to continue to get you elected. And that's again, I think, evidence of the changing demographic here locally, that people are getting younger as well, and so they don't have the same tie to the legacy that others might. And that's part of a city growing up and changing, and some will lament that, and some will celebrate it, and we'll see how that plays out. But I think it's an important crossroads for our city right now, and I think that there's an opportunity for us to make some changes that will improve how we manage our overall planning and community, so that we continue to grow and maintain our lifestyle.
That's right. I just yesterday got in the mail my copy of BC Business, which is a really nice magazine that talks about new and innovation and all sorts of things. And I am looking at this very minute of a map and descriptions of the 13 municipalities that make up the Greater Victoria area. And it covers a pretty good chunk of space. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're an island. We don't have infinite space. These areas are, I'm sure that they were driven by little communities that popped up many, many, many years ago that just grew into each other. And so I'm debating how they got divided up in the first place, because it's pretty clear that everybody needs everybody else. But it's a really interesting configuration of what's going on in the lower islands. I mean, it's getting to be a crowded little place. And of course, the difficulty is, and I say with respect to the tech sector, we have mountains in the way. So getting through from one area to the other is not always an easy thing. Technology speaking wise, we're relying on satellites just to get to the other side of the mountain. I mean, there's some great difficulties with keeping communication on top of everything. I mean, you can't even get radio signals in some parts. Try going over the Malahat. So that's all technology driven too, right?
Well, yes, but I would say that on the digital side, our island is remarkably well connected, and that's we wouldn't have a tech industry if that wasn't the case. Yes. Now, radio signals are a little bit older technology, but ironically, one of the best high mountaintop repeater communications companies is here in Victoria. It used to be called Daniels Electronics before it was acquired by Codan out of Australia. And they make high altitude mountain repeater communication systems for the harshest environments around the world. We don't happen to live in one of the harshest environments around the world, so I don't think their products are utilized, and they're more for communication, direct communication than in broadcast communication. But I think, from an infrastructure perspective, we have a pretty big advantage. I think we're better serviced than most parts of British Columbia, even though we're on an island that's bigger than Belgium, and there's a big giant moat between us and the rest of Canada. We've managed to get that part right. I think transportation infrastructure and affordability are the key issues. And you're talking about how did all these municipalities happen? When there were stagecoaches and this was a gold rush town, Saanich was the farmers' community, and Sydney was that was like 2 days away. You just so it made sense, and then they kind of all grew into each other over time. And I don't know what we'll see happen with shared services or amalgamation or any other approach to regional government, but I think we would be better served if there was more authority in the hands of a group that was thinking about the entire region than in the hands that are thinking about city blocks at a time. But I'm not an urban planner, and I never want to see my name on a ballot again in my life. So I'm not going to get involved in that.
Boy, that would be a hot seat, all right.
Yeah.
To talk about amalgamation and all that sort of thing. I mean, people aren't fond of that conversation when they have helped their community grow into what it is. And now we're talking about, and we're just going to let Big Brother take over all of it. And all of a sudden, all these conspiracy theories start. Anyway, so what do you think Victoria is lacking then? I mean, Victoria has grown in the past number of years hugely. But especially in the tech sector, so what do we need? What do we need to be able to really keep this momentum going? And I know we need to keep the young people, and I know we need to have a broad perspective, but really specifically, what do we need to do? Do we need schools? Do we need more companies? What do we need?
We need affordable housing. And I don't mean subsidized housing, but affordable housing options for young families. And so we need to look at that, whether or not that's rental or ownership. We have a lack of inventory that's affordable, and so that's key as we continue. Because otherwise, tech companies, if they want to hire people, have to pay a lot more money, which reduces their competitive advantage, and then they have to sell their products for more, and it can be more difficult to survive. So that's one. We need more young people. We are always looking for people to hire, and so we need more people coming here. And we need more investment capital for the entrepreneurs so that they can quickly and efficiently raise the capital they need to grow successful tech companies. And that both of those two fall to that we need to continue to improve on the recognition of what we have to offer here as a city. As more and more people hear the story about this vibrant, like we win every award. You mentioned it sort of in my bio at the beginning that it's Canada's fittest city, smartest city, most romantic city, second most creative city, according to Richard Florida, which I disagree with them. I think we're the most creative city, but of course I do. But all of those things, we know that this is a great place. We need to keep getting that word out so that when manufacturing is struggling in Ontario and they're thinking about what they want to do, they'd think, well, what about Victoria? Is that an option for us? Or when the oil and gas industry is struggling in Calgary and Edmonton, they think, well, what about Victoria? Is that an opportunity for us? As investors, when they find out the quality of the companies that are up and coming out of our community, they start thinking, well, I like visiting Victoria, and fortunately there's 2 flights a day to San Francisco that fly directly, so I can get there easily. If we get more people and we get more capital, the entrepreneurs that are here are going to be more efficient at building the economy and the community. And so those are the main things that we need to keep our eyes on. And so we need to keep what we've got, and we need more of those other things.
Coming from Alberta, as I said, I was astonished when we moved to the island to realize that I don't have statistics. I'm pulling this out of a hat, but my goodness me, it does appear to me that we must have more entrepreneurs per capita than any other place.
I agree. Yeah, this is the most entrepreneurial place I've been. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you agree.
Yeah, when you come to Victoria, like I said, only 1% of the population lives here, and lots more than that want to be here. Even if you get a job, a more steady, traditional job in government, to find the way to build the relationship and to make it, to stand out and to get that job, you're an entrepreneur, right? And also, I think a lot of people who come here, they're like, I want to be in Victoria. They get here and then they realize, well, if I want to stay here, I better find a way to make my living by creating what I'm going to do. And so it naturally attracts risk takers because they move across the country to be a part of it, and then it forces them to be an entrepreneur if they want to stay. And I think that's been one of our keys to success, is that everybody's an entrepreneur.
Well, when come to BC means bring cash, because there are no jobs to be had, so people come to BC ready, knowing that they will have to find a way to make their own.
Yeah, I guess I'm sure that's partly true. I think that's maybe an idea that was that's possibly passed. I think the most job growth we're seeing in the country right now is in British Columbia.
Now it is.
Yeah. And so, but that's the same as changing the reputation of the city, an idea that's, 10, 30 years old. It takes time for people to see evidence to know the difference. So I think entrepreneurs do well here. They're well supported and there's a great community for them. And risk takers are rewarded.
I completely agree with you there. It does seem that the ceiling is pretty marshmallowy, that you can grow as far and as fast as you have energy and tenacity to do so here. I want to talk to you a little bit about Viatec. Has Viatec ever been cited as being idealistic to a fault?
Geez, I don't think so. I mean, when you're running a not-for-profit society, you're mandate driven, and so it's really your job to be idealistic, right? So I like to talk about our altruism and our benevolence as sort of key character traits of the organization. I think our greatest fault is that we do really try and push limits, and we really do try and raise standards. And sometimes that takes a lot more resources with a limited return. Sometimes it pays great return, and we're well known for it. But we don't look for the easy way, and sometimes that just makes us tired.
I'm sure. So, how many people do you have? You're the CEO.
Yes.
So, tell me about how many people do you have on your team?
Yeah, it varies, and it depends on how we count that. So, the core team is 6, and then we have our building, so that has a different team, and then we have our cafe, which has a different team, and then our program with the accelerator program, where we have multiple executives and residents. That at any given time we can have 2 to 5 executives and residents on top of that. So I get asked that every once in a while, how many people do you are working at Viatec? And my answer is somewhere between 6 and 15 usually, and it just really depends on the circumstances of the day. But overall, our head count's in the 12 range.
So that puts you firmly in the small business category, but affecting such a huge number of people and businesses. That's an awfully big responsibility for 6 to 15 people.
Well, yeah, managing expectations is something we have to do very well. There's definitely more we could do if we had more resources. So we have to pick our spots carefully and look for the places where we can make the biggest difference on behalf of our members. But there are larger organizations that do what we do in other parts of the country. And sometimes, we're a little bit jealous of all that money and all those people. But at the same time, I think if you ask the team here, they all take pride in our ability to get more with less. And we'll continue to try and move the needle on that. Viatec, when I started running it, was less than a quarter of the size it is today. And, who knows where we'll take it next. It'll all come down to how successful we can be at meeting the wants and needs of the industry.
So I wanted to ask you what your plans are for you.
Personally?
It doesn't sound like you have any intention of leaving Viatec. And it sounds to me, and I could be dead wrong because I'm used to that your personal life and your life at Viatec have merged, and that line is really blurry. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I mean, Victoria is a city, but it's a small one, 340,000 people overall. So, yeah, it's difficult to maintain any delineation between a profile career like running a tech association and your personal life. But you're right, I'm not looking at anything else. I never thought I would do any job for 16 years. But my board is very supportive of my entrepreneurial spirit, and they like the innovative ideas that we're bringing. And so, it's not a lot of not-for-profit boards that would trust a CEO to go out and find a building to buy. And we really took all of our chips and bet them on this one idea. And it's worked out very well, but that kind of support that you get from your community and your board breeds a lot of loyalty. And then the freedom to come up with ideas like that and to do crazy things like space buses and art cars and to put on an award show that's as much entertainment as it is talking points. All of that's very rewarding. And so I kind of get the best of both worlds. I get to be an entrepreneur, but I also, when I go to sleep at night, I know that there's other entrepreneurs out there that we're making a difference to helping them build whatever their dreams are and the people that they're trying to employ. And so, you get the reward of freedom, but you get the reward of difference. And I think that gives a lot of meaning to my career. And so, Viatec and I have the Viatec logo tattooed on my arm thanks to a charity fundraiser, and I thought nothing of that. I was more than proud to put that on me because I know for the rest of my life, regardless of what happens, I'm going to look back and say that that was probably the most difference I ever could have made with my life.
And isn't that my goal? Is to leave this world just the tiniest little bit better than the way I found it. And for you, you've already done that, and you're just partway through.
Well, yeah, and look, I don't want to overstate it. There's a lot of important moving parts. A lot of the times, you have to learn when you're in the sort of a not-for-profit or a social sector. You have to learn how to lead from the back, and that is create the conditions for good decisions to be made. You don't stand up front and demand everybody go in a certain direction, and that can be hard sometimes, but it actually can be really rewarding. And so, a lot of other people are making good decisions. We're just trying to help them see them.
One of my favorite sayings that I heard somewhere along the way was, "Hark, I must go quickly, for there go my people, and I am their leader."
Yeah. No, very, very true. Very true.
Very true. Well, Dan, our hour has come to pass. Thank you so much for being on our show and sharing with us the wonderful ways that tech is making a difference, not only on Vancouver Island and Victoria specifically, but around the world. And thanks to you and your team for helping Victoria grow and thrive and be a hub for our burgeoning young talent. And we're hoping they will call this island home as well.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the kind words.
You're very welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Dan Gunn of Viatec, based in Victoria on beautiful Vancouver Island. My name is Rosemary Barnes, the host of Off the Coast Views from Vancouver Island, bidding you a final farewell as the show is going off the air in approximately 30 seconds time. I've enjoyed my time with you. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope everyone is able to change as quickly and as easily and as prosperously as they can. And I bid you a fond farewell.
Thank you for listening to Off the Coast, Views from Vancouver Island, with host Rosemary Barnes. To book Rosemary as a speaker or speaking coach, or to offer suggestions of extraordinary guests for the show, please visit her website at www.confidentstages.com.